Good morning, everyone. I think we'll get started now. We have most of our attendees have made their connection to the webinar. And my name is Randy Rafi. I'm the Director of Sales with Silac Software. Today I'll be presenting on best practices using MP Studio. We'll talk a little bit about the authoring aspect and best practices there, and then how to extend that beyond authoring your management pack using some of the lifecycle management capabilities in MP Studio. I have additional resources joining me on the call today, so you can submit questions, and we have someone on standby to answer those questions for you. I will be recording this session, and a link will be made available sometime later today or tomorrow if you wish to review that recording at your own convenience. Okay, let's get started. I have a few slides I'd like to share with you before we get into looking at the best practices. A little bit about Silac Software. We were founded in 2003, so one of the original members of the Microsoft System Center Alliance. Over the past 13 plus years, our solutions have grown beyond reporting to include authoring and also compliance. So I'll tell you just a little bit about those solutions as well. We're also now providing services around System Center and OMS, and I'll tell you a little bit about those. So the products include the High Trust Pack. This is the compliance solution that we have. This is a solution we put together in partnership with Microsoft and High Trust that basically does monitoring and reporting as well as remediation for various security compliance controls. So on the operations manager side, we now have actually 3 products. MP Author, this is the free product. MP Author Professional, which is new and most recent addition to our family of tools. It fits right in between the free solution for authoring management packs and MP Studio, the full enterprise level, if you will, authoring / lifecycle management tool. Okay, CP Studio is a baseline authoring tool, has similar features to MP Studio in terms of being able to do things like documentation, version control, testing, etc. But that's all for SCCM and desired state monitoring, or if you're using SCCM 2007, you might be more familiar with DCM. So CP Studio is your baseline authoring tool. In terms of services, we offer everything from management pack development or assistance with that, developing baselines, OMS deployment, and also Power BI and Azure. So if you have any questions around those services, you can just simply send an email to myself, randyr@silac.com, or sales@silac.com. Will get to me as well. In terms of worldwide use, Silac's MP Author has over 6,000 users now, and this just gives you a sneak peek at some of those users, and from all industries, from big oil to finance, insurance, and retail, etc. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on MP Author, but if you haven't heard of this, it's a free tool for developing management packs, and you can design management packs for new applications or homegrown applications, or maybe a vendor supplied application. There's no management pack available, so you can create your own using MP Author. It is wizard driven, so it's IT pro friendly, shall we say. So we basically will pre-populate a lot of those wizards with information you need, simple things like putting in a display name. So MP Author does that for you. You can create your own discoveries, targets, rules, and monitors, as well as knowledge. Then there's the MP Author Professional, recently introduced this summer. And MP Author Professional has lots of advanced authoring capabilities. And I'm just going to mention some of those now. And they include the ability, well, across the board, to support SNMP-based management packs. So this is also new, adding the support for SNMP development. So you can create your targets, SNMP targets, two-state, two-probe, probe and trap type monitors. And then in terms of rules, we support event and perf rules for SNMP probe-based, and for trap-based SNMP rules, we support event and alert rules. Okay, now some of the other advanced authoring capabilities, the ability to create a new class, new relationships, process monitor, and you can see here in that green section, we also support both the aggregate and dependency rollup monitors. So those are some advanced authoring capabilities available in MP Author Professional. And we're working on some new and exciting improvements for the SNMP stuff, and then early next year we'll have some even more exciting stuff added to MP Author Professional. Once again, it's wizard driven, and you can follow the recommended or the default settings, but you can also modify those settings. Once again, using Professional, you can configure your own discoveries, targets, rules, and monitors for both Windows and now also SNMP devices. Just quickly, at the bottom line here on this slide, you can see you can get MP Author Professional until the end of August for $9.95 US. Okay, so first year's annual maintenance is included at no charge. So this is a special introductory pricing for MP Author Professional. MP Studio has all the capabilities of MP Author Professional, but then it does so much more, and I'm going to show you some of those things today. It would take hours to show you everything, and I'm also happy to do a one-on-one presentation if you want to dig into any of those capabilities a little bit deeper. So let's talk about some of those capabilities, the documentation. And this is, people purchase MP Studio just for the documentation capabilities, and it just keeps getting better and better. We've added automation support, so you can basically set up a schedule to back up your management packs, but you can also set up a schedule to document key management packs that are going through a high period of change. Whether you're authoring a new management pack and you just want to schedule an emailed report to your manager once a day showing here's the progress with that MP we're authoring, or maybe you're doing a health check, creating overrides, and you want to get an update on that on a daily basis from the team that's working on it. So documentation, this is a best practice. Share in a clear, concise manner the configuration, including the override settings, in a spreadsheet. So I'll show you that report during the session today. Now, MP Studio is where you work on your overrides. You've authored that cool management pack in MP Author Professional, but you want to give your internal customers a way to tune that a little bit. Or if you're providing services or building management packs for clients, and we have lots of them. I spoke to a guy this week and he's using MP Author Professional. He's got to create 25 management packs in a very short time frame. And so Professional is doing the trick for him. Now, his customers could benefit from MP Studio, so they can now tune the overrides and customize the behavior of those new rules and monitors in that management pack. So override management, the best and easiest way to do that is to use MP Studio. And I'll show you some of that today. We'll take a quick look at, say, bulk override management, which allows you to implement standard setting very quickly for tens or hundreds of properties at the same time. Now, all the advanced authoring stuff is in MP Studio. I'll show you just a little bit of that today. I won't be authoring the management pack. We are hosting a session later today at 2 p.m. Eastern. I'll post a link to that, and if you want to see that webinar, it's at 2 o'clock today, and that'll focus on authoring. We're going to spend a little extra time today on using PowerShell inside your authoring. Okay, now MP Studio provides version control, and this is a best practice. You don't want to start authoring management packs and save them here and there, or have a team. Imagine if you've got 2 or more people could be involved creating rules and monitors, etc., for your management pack. So you could end up having multiple copies. MP Author Professional, for example, and the free version of MP Author, you save the MP that you're authoring to the file system. And so the risk there is that you could lose track of which MP is the latest version. Now, that's certainly when you start to work in a team environment, that's a little bit of a higher risk. So with MP Studio, we have a database backend that allows us to do a lot of cool things. One, you've got that version control mechanism, and we'll keep backups in there as you check management packs into the store, okay? Now, as you put management packs in the store, we compare them to the previous copy, and this is how we start extending that version control right into providing auditing, tracking who's changed what and when. Perhaps a little known fact, if you modify an MP inside native tools, the version of the management pack doesn't increment. Okay, so you're really at risk of not incrementing the version. If you make changes in MP Studio, we automatically increment the version of management packs. So right there, I would say is a best practice. You should be, every time you change a management pack, you need to increment the version number of the MP. And that's just a small example how MP Studio takes care of some of those things for you. Okay, view running workflows. This is the ability to report what rules, monitors, discoveries, and what overrides are running on any given agent. So that could be considered part of a best practices. If you're creating management pack, you want to make sure that those rules, monitors, discoveries are being applied against the application server. So you could run this workflow against that app, that server that management pack should be running on, and you can just confirm it's actually running there. So that workflow does apply, and it would be a best practice, to complete the whole authoring experience. Okay, testing and tuning. This is pre-deployment best practice. You really need to know how that MP is going to perform before you put in production. And I'll tell you, a couple of stories. One, a client had deployed a management pack. This is a large financial institution in Europe, and there was 1 million alerts flooding their system. 1 million alerts. So typically I hear all the time of hundreds or thousands of alerts, and this can happen if you are forced to deploy a management pack without really being able to test it in a lab, for example. But in MP Studio, you can simulate a management pack running against a server and collect data from a production server and compare that to the configuration of the management pack. And that's all done sort of offline. Well, not sort of, it's all the analysis of the data is done on your MP Studio installation. In other words, when you run this test, it's not going to generate alerts in your operations manager environment. It's all isolated to the MP Studio location. So that test will allow you to determine the 20% of elements that are generating 80% of your alerts. And try that out and you'll see what I mean. The noisy elements will be pinpointed in an MP Studio test. Okay, pricing, again, this is a special introductory pricing because we've introduced professional. We wanted to also offer our MP Studio customers an upside, and so the price has been reduced significantly here. And so for $19.95, you can get a copy of MP Studio, and once again, we're supplying the annual maintenance at no charge for the first year. Okay, so happy to answer questions or provide quotes on that later. That's it in terms of slides. I'd like to briefly share with you one more item before we get into looking at the actual console and some of the best practices stuff that you can implement. So bear with me. I just want to use a marker here to highlight a couple of things. I've talked about the documentation piece. This is one of the most popular capabilities in MP Studio. And you'll get people that just want to know what rules and monitors are running against their server and how it's configured. Or perhaps you've got internal clients. With MP Studio, you can provide a spreadsheet that'll show all the rules, the monitors, and the overrides in a clear, concise manner. Maybe you've got change management committees and they just want to see configuration of a management pack. So one of the things you'll notice is by combining all the documentation that's available in MP Studio, you can come up with a pretty nice package for your change management committees. Okay, so this documentation piece, we'll take a look at that. One of the other things I mentioned in terms of best practices was to test the management pack before you put it in production. Okay, so with MP Studio, we have the ability to test a management pack. So this is, really validating the performance. And then you need some means to determine, okay, is that too many alerts or do we need to do some tuning? So you need some type of a scorecard. In MP Studio, you'll get what's called the resultant set of alerts report. Okay, and that, I'm actually making that harder to see, let's erase those drawings, but that resultant set of alerts report allows you to determine, the alerts per hour. You can run a 1-hour test. And if a management pack generates 1,000 alerts, that's probably going to be a problem putting in production. So you can then tune the management pack. In other words, it didn't pass the test. If it generated 1,000 alerts in a 1-hour test, you probably need to go back to the drawing board and maybe disable some elements. And note, you can do that in bulk too. You can do a bulk disable or a bulk enable of tens or hundreds of rules and monitors at the same time. So we'll take a look at that bulk override management. Now, the other thing that I talked about in terms of best practices is version control, change management. Let's call it change management. And that's available in MP Studio. And that's because we have right here at the heart of the application, we have version control support through a database. This is your backup, okay? Now, that's a best practice as well. And I'll show you how to do that in MP Studio. You can schedule a backup on a nightly basis. That means if you've got, a team in a follow the sun model supporting operations manager and somebody makes a change, you've got the backup scheduled. So you're going to make sure that you're adding copies to the store database. So MP Studio, that has the database backend, we call it the store. And the backup is going to automatically put in there any management pack that has changed. Okay, so as you add second, third, fourth copies, every time you add a management pack, the latest copy is compared to the previous copy. And that's how we build the audit history. Okay, so the audit history is another report that you can schedule. Guess what? There's another best practice. You run the backup, it backups all your unsealed MPs, and you can schedule an audit history report. And you can run that on a daily basis, and then you can track, go back to that spreadsheet to see what's changed, who made the change, and exactly what did they change. Was it previously 50 and then somebody's changed it to 70 and now all of a sudden the threshold is too high and it's never going to generate an alert? Anyhow, with MP Studio's audit history, you can look at those details and you can schedule that report. Okay, I'm going to talk about just a couple more best practices here before we move into the actual console. When you add a second copy into the store database, I mentioned one gets compared to the other copy, and that's how we build the audit history. Well, that technology, that comparison feature is based on our comparison engine. And that comparison engine can be used on an ad hoc basis. Basically, that means, let's say you've authored a new management pack, or someone on your team has, or they've made changes to one that you've got in production. Or maybe the application has evolved, or service packs have been added, hardware's changed, who knows. But basically, the MP needs an update, and you've got a copy of it running here in production. And so the guy who owns SCOM, he's basically at the mercy of the MP developer who says, I've added nothing that's going to generate alerts. Well, with MP Studio, you can compare the MP in production on an ad hoc basis to that new file-based MP to find out what's been added, what's been deleted, and what's changed. So that's available. That's a best practice. Don't just deploy that MP, compare it first. Find out what's been added, what's been deleted, and what's changed. Hopefully we'll have time to look at that as well. So one final word on this comparison engine that I want to share with you is MP Studio now has the ability to compare all management packs in all management groups to a master copy in the store database. So here's my store. That letter M stands for master copy. You've got all your master copies of MPs in the store database, and then you have multiple management groups. We have a report, the group compare, that will compare all management groups and all management packs in those groups simultaneously to the store database. Why would you want to do that? Well, this will tell you if something is out of sync. Do you have an older version running in one or more of your management groups? And wouldn't that be important to know? Let me give you a real, true story on a situation. A client of ours had over half a dozen management groups, and there was a management pack they had developed that was used to manage alerts, forwarding them to their ticketing system. And so they deployed the management pack, or when they were ready to go live with it, they had an update to the management pack. And one of the management groups did not get the new version. And what happened was the alerts were not being forwarded to the ticketing system. So they lost visibility to an entire management group. Okay, so this group compare allows you to report any discrepancies in versions, but it also allows you to synchronize or remediate right from the report. Okay, so I don't see any questions coming in just yet, but I want to encourage you to go ahead. If you have any questions, please feel free to submit those. And we do have somebody online who will answer those questions. We'll take some time at the end, assuming we have some time, to review those questions once again. And I'll do my best to help out in answering those. But okay, let's do this. We're going to erase these drawings, get to normal mode. Okay, and let's take a look at MP Studio. So here we have MP Studio, and just a brief description. On the left side, you've got your store database. Okay, that's just SQL. Even Express will work for you. We support most versions of SQL, and I've also registered 2 management groups. So I've got my corporate environment here, and I've got my lab management group. Okay, let's right away, while I'm here, let's talk about best practices. One of them was to back up your management group. And so I can do that at the root. I've got 2 groups registered here, and I can trigger an ad hoc backup, or I can schedule it. And this is my recommendation as best practice. Schedule this backup. And this will run even if you're not logged on to the console, as long as you enter your username and password here. You can set the schedule to run that daily, okay? Every day, I would recommend every day. And you can also set it up to send an email to just provide a status, the backup log, in other words. So you would get that information. So that's the scheduled task capability. And what happens when you back up a management group is it's going to, guess what? Here's a backup folder in the store database. And you can see the same 2 management groups are there. So that's my backup folder. And in here, let's just look at my corporate environment. And you can see I've got several management packs. Now these are unsealed management packs, right? You can't take a .mp file out of a management group. It basically would unseal it, okay, and then it's no good. So the backup is to back up your override MPs or unsealed MPs. This is your investment, or a big part of your investment in SCOM, so you should be backing it up, and that's why it's a best practice. Okay, lots of good reasons to back them up. One would be, hey, what if you ever need to go back to an older version? So here, for example, I have my Windows Server 2012 R2 monitoring overrides, and I've got multiple versions in there. You can see the timestamp that these were added. You can see a brief summary indicating, you know, the relative or the rough changes at high level. There was 1 deletion and 5 changes between my version .4 and my version .3. Okay, so and bear with me 1 second. See, we're getting some questions. I just want to have a quick peek here and make sure that I can be heard. Paul, do you mind just unmuting yourself and confirm? Can you hear me okay?
Yep, I can hear you just fine.
Okay, Paul, thanks.
Did you want to answer the question, or?
No, I'll continue with the webinar. I just saw your
Okay.
message on Skype, and I guess it's an old message. Sorry, I thought maybe my audio was not working. Okay, thanks, Paul. And back to back to our regular scheduled webinar. So this is my backup for that one management pack. And what I was about to say is, why would you want to have the backup? Well, you can do things like generate the audit history report. You can schedule that, same options here. You can publish the audit report to a folder. You can set up the email subscription, okay? But you might want to roll back. What if somebody created some overrides and all of a sudden you were getting flooded with alerts? You could delete that MP in production and just simply right click on the previous version in the store database and deploy that right from here. And if I check deploy, it's just going to prompt me, okay, where do you want to deploy that? And notice I could deploy it to any management group registered here. Okay, but let's get back to this folder. This is my backup folder. While we're here, why don't we take a quick look at this audit history report? And so on the right-hand side, you can see the details. If I scroll across the grid, there's information in here, for example, previous and new values. One particular item here was changed from warning to success. Now, we'll come back to this audit history report, but I would customize the grid. If you have multiple people working on a management pack, this would allow you to better determine who made those changes. And in fact, I'd probably group by changed on as well. And then it makes it easier to go in and say, oh, I want to see changes that were made July 20th. Okay, so that's just a peek at some of that auditing capabilities. Now, I'll come back to that. So that's it on the backup as a best practice. That's one special folder in the store. I do have another special folder here I want to tell you about, the sealed folder. This contains only vendor management packs, only management packs that have been sealed. So for example, all my Microsoft MPs are in here. And let's just, come down list a little bit. I'm going to go in and I'm going to find Windows. Let's look at Windows 2012 operating system monitoring, and there's 3 different versions in there of the Microsoft MP. So this is a best practice. When you download MPs, assuming you have MP Studio, do not import them into Operations Manager. Bring them into the store database first, because as you'll see, you can deploy them right from here, central deployment using MP Studio. So if you've got multiple management groups, you've always got a copy of those MPs in the store database, and you can deploy from here, and I'll show you how to do that. So this is my sealed folder. If you're authoring your own MPs and you've got your own certificate, you would, once you check in a sealed MP, it'll create a folder with your company name, whatever you use for company name, it'll create that folder here. So here's an MP that was sealed using the Silac software certificate. Okay, so all your sealed MPs will end up in there. The last folder type I want to talk about is a project folder, and you can create these from the root of the store. For example, add new project folder, my new project, and in there you might start authoring MPs. So you could just right click and say create new management pack, and this launches the same wizards. If you're familiar with MP Author or you've looked at MP Author Professional, it's the same wizards. It's all built right into MP Studio though in a single console. We'll take a look at that in just a couple of minutes. Okay, so that's a project folder. Here's my current project folder. In here I've got, for example, I'm working on an override MP for Windows Server 2012 overrides. And I'll show that to you in a bit. And I should rock and roll here because time is ticking. So that is just a sneak peek here. Let's introduce, let's say we're working on a new MP that we're authoring. And so here's my test for Silac new MP, and I started creating rules and monitors. Let's bring the editing window up. and Mike will be showing more of the authoring stuff. So I'm going to do just a little bit so I can introduce some best practices here in today's session. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick monitors. If I right-click there, these are the monitors we support. And let me point out the advanced authoring ones, the ability to create a process monitor. That's advanced. Here's my SNMP monitors, and here's my roll-up monitors. Those are advanced monitors. Okay, I'm going to just very quickly create an event monitor. All right, so I'm going to use my own laptop here, and what I want to demonstrate here is that when you're authoring, you should be saving your management packs. As a best practice, check them into the stored database so you've constantly got those in the stored database, and if something happens, you're not going to lose any of your development work. Just like working on a Word document, if you've ever written something and then lost it because you didn't have didn't auto save or that type of thing, it's very frustrating, especially if you do your expenses and you lose that. Okay, not that it's ever happened to me, but okay. So I'm just going to quickly create a monitor here. Let's use event ID, and maybe I'll go with, I could use a user. Maybe we'll just stick with event source, and I'll pick some random random one here and hit next. And we're going to accept the defaults here. Okay. And we'll go with the default again, 15 seconds for my wait time. We'll have that enabled. There's the default naming convention. Okay, this all looks good. So what we've done here, let's also have this generate an alert for that monitor. You can see all this stuff pre-populated. You're going to love MP Author Professional. Okay, so we added a monitor. And what I'm going to point out in the tab up above, you can see there's an asterisk in that tab. Let me highlight it just in case. So I'm looking up here on this tab, and you can see that asterisk there right beside the version number. That's just telling me this hasn't been saved yet. Now, if I close this, I'll probably be prompted to save that. Okay, but I have the Save MP toolbar button. So I'm just going to save that change. This is a preview of the audit history. We're incrementing the version. Remember I said that happens automatically. So that's a best practice. If you make a change to an MP in native tools, that doesn't happen automatically. You have to manually go in and change the version number. So we've got 6 additions and 1 change. We can see the information down below, all the additions. You can see the various language packs. There's the 1 monitor that I added. Now I could add some comments in here, maybe why this was added, or maybe there was a work order request, etc. You could add some comments in there. We'll just save that, and on the left-hand side, you'll see in the stored database, now we've got 2 versions. So the takeaway here is, let's see if we've got rules. As you work with a management pack, best practice, save copies to the store so you don't lose your work. Okay, it would be a shame to go in and create a bunch of rules and monitors and lose all that information. I'm just going to go back to this monitor here briefly. Okay, and down the right-hand side, you can see that's my properties view edit. I can do things in there. Anything bold, I can edit. So I can change that confirmed delivery from false to true. There's my asterisk telling me I've changed something. Okay, I could right-click here and go into the XML if I want to. Personally, I'm not going to do a lot in XML, but there's another value, remotable. I can just come in here and change that to false. So there are lots of ways to edit, and I'm just trying to make a quick edit here to demonstrate the point that as you make changes, be sure to save those back into the store database. Preview of my audit history. Here's the details down below. There's the previous and new values. Add my comments. Save that, and now we have a 3rd copy in the database. There are other ways, just from an authoring perspective. Pretty much everything I'm going to show you applies to management packs that you might have authored. So, you know, it's all supported. I talked about documentation. You know, I can come in here and document this management pack to an Excel workbook. I could schedule that as well. It's the same scheduling window. So if you're working on a management pack and it's got a high rate of change, you're doing a lot, in other words, or there's a team involved in it, set documentation up and have that emailed to all the stakeholders. Maybe it's your customer, maybe it's your manager. Okay, let's just quickly document this management pack. Okay, so it's creating a separate sheet down below. So that's just our summary information. But you can see here's my monitor that we created. Here's the language pack. There's a string resource in there. So not so much to that MP yet, okay? But here's an example of a Windows Server operating system monitoring MP. This is a sealed MP that was running in production. So to get this report, all I did was, let's come back here and I'll show you. Here's that MP. You can see the tab defining this is Silac Corporate on the server and the MP. And prior to the session, I chose to document this to a workbook. And let me show you what that looks like. And if you had authored a management pack with lots of elements and stuff in it, maybe created overrides, then you would end up seeing something like this. So let's just take a quick look at the rules here. Now, you can see all the rules. There's 97 of them, and you might be noticing the blue shade. That is an override. So row 5 is an override that was created for row 4, the rule there. So we're embedding the overrides directly with the elements that they reference. So you can have a very concise way to determine how that rule or rules are configured. Same for monitors. You can see here, and you can collapse this if you wanted to. If you don't want to see all the overrides, you can do that. Okay. Now, what if you want to see just the overrides? Right? You've put a lot of work into authoring the MP, but somebody's customized its configuration by creating all these overrides. And here's the final worksheet listing all the overrides. And just quickly, for those of you who might be interested, the last column shows where the overrides are stored. And in another webinar, I talk about how to find misplaced overrides. In other words, somebody saved them in the wrong place. This is one way to do it. And if I just scroll down, you can see I've got overrides stored in the default management pack. I've got a third override management pack here. So running this report, I would say, is a best practice. Finding out, hey, does it make sense? This last column, are these overrides stored where they should be? And I would say this is definitely a best practice to confirm you've got the override stored in the right place, right? And that's a risk. Anytime you've got a team involved working on a management pack, you could easily get elements stored in the wrong place. Okay, at risk of having a slight delay in showing you this report, I'm going to pick referencing overrides. And again, this is for my production MP. And same thing is important when you're looking at an MP that you authored, okay? Whether it's installed in the management group or you've got it on the file system, documenting it, understanding the overrides that have been configured, that's an important part of the package when you deliver that to production. Make sure you have the documentation available. If they've got a copy of MP Studio, they can do it themselves, but that's not always the case, right? So you package up these nice documents, and that helps everybody understand the configuration. I just want to show you one more way to document in MP Studio. You'll notice there's a toolbar button there, Export to Excel. And what that does is it just exports the current table. So basically what you see is what you get, and what I'm attempting to show you here once I see my overrides is to show you how to document just that single table. If you've customized the view a little bit, the export to Excel will honor that, or it will, if you've hidden columns or set filters, etc., when you use that export to Excel toolbar button, it will honor those custom settings that you've created. Okay, so this won't take too much longer. I see we've got about 15 minutes to go, and there are other things I want to show you. So here's my referencing overrides. Again, this is my production environment, and I'll quickly show you some of the customizing things you can do. You can hide columns, for example. You can group by columns. Just to make a little more sense of this, I'll group by context and parent, for example. Okay, now if I use that export to Excel toolbar button, here's the spreadsheet, and there it is, group by context and then by parent. Okay, so that's an example, another example of the documentation capabilities in MP Studio. You can use that. So let's do this. I'm going to demonstrate a couple of things at the same time. That'll be an interesting trick, but to do this, I want to show you working with a management pack offline. So let's go to my sealed folder. Maybe I already have it open. Let's see. No. Okay, so we're going to go into the Microsoft Corporation. Let's scroll down, find the Windows Server MP 2012 operating system, and I'm going to open the most current version. We'll just double click on that. And I want to demonstrate here an example of creating overrides. So let me just temporarily hide the properties view edit. I'm going to make that column a little smaller, and I'm going to group by target. Actually, I'm going to make several changes here. Before I group, I'm just going to first do a select all. Now I'm going to right click and choose manage overrides. MP Studio is going to look at all 49 monitors and show me just the common properties. Okay, so let's make a bunch of changes here at the same time. Select the properties that you want to either create or edit, and I'm going to make sure they're all disabled. So I'm going to set that to false. Now I'm going to go in and I'll just make some random settings here. Auto resolve I'll set to true. Alert priority, let's say I want to implement high across the board. Alert on state, let's just set that to warning. Alert severity, let's set that to warning, and the roll-up algorithm, we'll leave that at worst of. Okay, so we are potentially making 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times 49. Okay, my math's not that good, but we could be potentially making that many edits or creating new. This is a demonstration of the bulk override management capabilities. Okay, here's just a summary of what's happening. You can see there's some creating, there's a bunch of changing going on. We'll hit yes. Now it's applying those changes. So this is version 73, 48 new overrides and 124 changes. And we talked about auditing in terms of best practice. You really want to know who's making the changes and when. You can see it's being tracked right here. Here's who made the change, here's the time of the change, and the details of what was changed, so previous and new values. Everybody wants to track changes, but if you're doing it manually, which is the only way to do it other than using MP Studio, it's hard to continue that, and the more people involved in the process, the harder it is to maintain it. And so with MP Studio, you can automate that by using the store database in MP Studio. You make changes, save it to the store database. We're building the audit history. That's available to me, and I can generate that. Another option for this was to group by target and say, I'm just going to edit the operating system target and get a bunch of those and say, okay. So choosing manage overrides will look at the 23 monitors and only show me the common properties, and there's a bunch of them. Just going to back out of that. Let's take a look at rules, for example. And here I might say, oh, for logical disk, I want to disable all of those. So we're going to take 16 of them. We didn't get them all. Probably the only one that's common is the enabled status. So maybe I want to set these to false just because I know I'm having trouble with my logical disk. So I'm just going to disable those temporarily. Okay, so it's got a handful of those being changed. and there ends up being a total of 4 changes in there. We'll save that. So in terms of best practice, we're making changes and saving them to the store database. We've got the audit history. Where did I save those changes? Well, let's go into my override MP. And here it is. There's all the different versions we've been checking into the store database. Okay, so we can look at this audit history. All right, there's the details. Maybe we group by, who made the change, so we can narrow that down. Group by changed on. And I could set this up to schedule the audit history report, have that sent to my manager so he can see all the great work I'm doing with this. And perhaps the next step is I want to test my override management pack. Now this is one that I created for Windows, but you're probably going to need to create an override management pack for an MP that you've authored, right? So test feature is an important feature to leverage. Let me tell you about the test feature as I kick this off. Just right click on the MP you want to test. Now it takes a minimum of 5 minutes to demonstrate the test. I'm going to show you the wizard and then we'll go to some historical results that I have already. Okay, as I go through the wizard, I'll tell you about this feature. It's a simulation, however, you're collecting real-time data from a server on your network. And you're going to pull that data back to your MP Studio installation. And let me just go with localhost here. We'll add that. You need to specify credentials. Okay, so this is just like running Perfmon or Event Viewer or Registry Editor remotely against that server I specified. Now in my case, I specified localhost, but I could specify any computer on my network. So you're authoring an MP for a specific application sitting on a server in your network. The MP doesn't even have to be in your management group. You can use MP Studio to test that management pack. I'm just happen to be testing my override management pack, but it's all the same functionality here. Okay, we'll hit next. I only specified one server, but you could specify one or more servers. Now I set the duration of the test. I could run it for 5 minutes minimum, but I would say recommend running a test for an hour. You might have a case where you want to run it for a day or more even. But as you increase the duration of the test, throttle back the sample rates for collecting the event log data and the perfmon data. Okay, you could even schedule that test to run later in the day if you want. Okay, so that's it in terms of the steps in the wizard. If I was to proceed with it, it's going to recreate the health model. It's going to connect to that server or servers I specified. It's going to confirm I have permissions to perfmon logs, event logs, perfmon counters, event logs, and the registry. And once it does that, it's going to start collecting all that data, perfmon data, and brings it back to MP Studio and compares it against the configuration of your management pack. So let's see what that looks like. Here you can see in my test results, I've got various MPs that I've tested over time. Let me see if I have something that generated an alert. With a smaller environment, I don't often get alerts, but let's see what we've got here. Okay, so here's one I ran a test on June the 6th. It generated one alert. Let's go with this. Okay, so historical test results. The suggestion I have is run a baseline test before you create your override MP. And then create your overrides, run a second test of that MP. So this will give you a comparison. How many alerts did it generate in a 1-hour test before you added the overrides, and how many did it create after? This will give you a really good indication if that management pack has been tuned nicely. Okay, so this is my historical test results. I just went in and said, show me the details. In other words, this is the data that was collected during the test. and you can see all the perfmon counters that were part of that, what server it ran against. This was only run against one server, but you could run it against more, okay? And if I just go down, let me pick a sample, physical disk writes per second, for example, you can chart that. And so if you're running a live test, you could see this update just like you would a perfmon screen, okay? Horizontal lines, standard deviation, the green is my average, putting the mouse over them will give you that value, okay? Now the solid vertical lines, those are events that occurred. Now events will all be displayed on the event log tab as well, okay? Coming back to the chart, you might be wondering about that dotted vertical line. That's the one alert that was generated in my test. So this gives you some good information about alerts relative to a given performance counter, for example. Okay, so let's take a quick look at the discovery. Here's my discovery. If you're authoring an MP, I would say this would be a really good report to look at because it'll help you confirm data. Because, for example, here, let's just look at, here's my processor, and right beside it, I can see the properties collected. Okay, so that can be very useful troubleshooting an MP that you've authored. So that is the data collected as part of the test. Here's the resultant set of alerts. It only generated one alert, okay, and that was logical disk fragmentation level is high. But if this had 100 alerts, I'd simply group by name and you would see which one generated the most alerts. And I only had one, but if you had 100 and one rule was generating 50 of those, it would have the number 50 here instead of the number 1. And you could then go in and focus on that element to tune it, create some overrides to manage that. So I apologize for having to basically whip through a lot of this stuff, but there's a lot of ways you can use MP Studio. I'm going to show you maybe 2 more reports if we have time. I want to show you the group compare because this is a best practice. I recommend that you schedule this group compare report. Every day, take a look at this report. And this will give you a solid indication, do you have the MPs in the management groups that you expect to have? The group compare is comparing all management groups to the store version. So let me just highlight a couple of things. In the middle, this is the version of each management pack in my store database. And the path tells me where in the store database. And then I've got 2 management groups, my lab management group and my corporate management group. Okay, so there's the groups being compared to the store version. Let me just clean those markings up. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to customize this grid a little bit. I'm going to group by sealed, and now I can focus on just my unsealed management packs. Okay, or I can focus on the sealed management packs. Now let's do this. Let's group by result as well. So now I can see I've got 143 management packs that are not in the group. Okay, I could even, let's see, let's scroll down a little bit here. I'm going to create a filter, custom filter. Let's say where the name contains Silac. Okay, so here, for example, is an MP that I've been working on. I just sealed this MP this morning. It doesn't exist in either management group, and I want to deploy that. So this is telling me, look, you've got a lot of referenced MPs here that have been upgraded as well. And so we're going to offer to deploy those at the same time. So here's all my referenced MPs. If I scroll down even more, there's the new MP that I had authored right at the bottom, but it's also offering to update all of those. If I hit yes, we're going to upgrade both my management groups with that test 6 MP. So I'm going to back out of that at this point. But that is the group compare. You can use this to keep your versions synchronized across all management groups and use that to deploy, or as you author a management pack, you can simply use the right click and deploy right from here. individually, that would certainly give me an option to deploy that test MP without having to upgrade all the references at the same time if I wanted to get that done more quickly. I have just a couple of minutes. I want to show one more thing, and this is just the ability to compare any two management packs. And for the purposes of this demo, I'm just going to compare two Microsoft MPs, and I'm going to go in here. Let me see if I can find something that's going to be interesting. SQL. Okay, I'm going to compare two older SQL MPs. If I right-click, I have a choice here to compare to a file-based MP, an installed MP, or one in the store database. So you can compare any two management packs. And why do you want to do this? You want to find out what's been added, what's been deleted, and what's changed. So let's compare that to the newer Microsoft SQL Server 2008 monitoring MP. And here we can see the differences between the two. There's nothing that really jumps out at me, but if I group by reason, I can see there were 5 additions and 14 changes. So I can even narrow this down a little bit more, and I can see, for example, the display name changed on one item, and it shows me the previous and new value. So if you're authoring an MP, this would be a very quick way to find out what's been added, what's been deleted, and what's changed. I would group by reason and path, and you can very quickly see, okay, there's a language pack, 4 of them added, and 1 module type was added. But if new rules were added or monitors were added, you might need to create some overrides. So there's a very good reason to run this ad hoc compare. If Microsoft releases a new version and you just deploy it and they've got new monitors, one of those could generate thousands of alerts. Okay, so we're really at the end of the session. We started a little bit late. I'm a couple minutes over. I'm going to send out in the window a link. If you're interested in registering for this afternoon's webinar, you can use that link to connect. If you have any questions, you can email me. I'm going to send you my email address. If you would like to get a quote, those special prices are good until the end of August. And remember, you get first year's maintenance at no charge. And MP Studio, for example, for a single license, that's over $500 less expensive than usual price. So, okay, that's it. At this point, I'm going to stop the recording and we'll stay on if you have any further questions. I'd like to thank everyone for joining today's presentation on best practices using MP Studio, and hopefully we'll see you on this afternoon session. If you can't make 2 p.m., the same webinar on authoring management packs, advanced authoring, and including the PowerShell demonstration is being offered at 9 a.m. You can go to our website and there's an option there to see our calendar under news and events. Now let's just do this. I'll bring that up briefly. We can have a peek. Still have some time. There's still a bunch of people on. If you want to submit any questions, I'm happy to jump in and answer some of those. So news and events. Under news and events, if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see in here we have a calendar of events. And so we just finished the best practices for management packs. This afternoon's webinar on advanced authoring, it's running again tomorrow morning. So if you are interested in that but can't stick around for this afternoon session, I'm going to also send the link to tomorrow morning's, and you could register for that. For those of you who are outside North America, you may want to do that.